Late December 1980. Rumors of mysterious aircraft sightings were circulating at the Woodbridge Bentwaters air bases in Suffolk. The strange encounters had begun on Christmas night, when airmen reported seeing unusual lights. By the early morning hours of Boxing Day, 2 men claimed to have come within feet of a landed craft in the neighboring forest. On the evening of the 27th, Deputy Base Commander Lieutenant Colonel Charles Holt was attending a holiday party at the officers' club. His celebration was cut short when one of his men arrived in a distressed state.
He showed up just white as a sheet. And he wasn't the type of person to get too excited too easily. He was a former Marine. He said, "It's back." We looked at each other and said, "What's back?" He said, "The UFO."
After 2 nights of disturbing stories, Holt decided to investigate himself.
The police were spending more time looking in the sky than they were at the airplanes they were supposed to be protecting. It's time to put this to rest.
Holt instructed a 3-man security team to assemble their gear and meet him at his quarters. Within minutes, they were heading toward Rendlesham Forest. By the time Holt arrived, a security cordon had been established around the perimeter of the woods. Holt was briefed on the situation and told that the UFO was no longer visible. The men, however, were still experiencing mysterious outages in their high-powered floodlights called light-alls. Holt and his team collected their gear, a stills camera, a Geiger counter for measuring radiation, and a night vision device called a starscope.
I took my small personal cassette recorder, which I carry just about everywhere with me, just to record the events.
The team entered the dark woods.
And I was going to investigate and show that there was definitely a good, reasonable explanation for everything.
The following is the recording Holt made that night.
150 feet or more from the initial, I should say, suspected impact point. Having a little difficulty, we can't get the light all to work. Seems to be some kind of mechanical problem.
Along with the malfunctioning light-alls, Holt's team encountered the same radio interference experienced by Burroughs and Penniston 2 nights before. They were walking through the area where Burroughs and Penniston reported seeing the mysterious craft, when Holt noticed gashes in the bark of several trees. It looked as though they'd been struck by a large object. Holt ordered one of his men to take photographs.
He took pictures of the indentations of the trees and everything. He was taking snap, snap, snap all the time.
The Geiger counter began registering high levels of radiation, but only in the areas surrounding the alleged landing site.
You're getting readings on the tree you're taking samples from on the side facing the suspected landing site. 4 clicks max. Up to 4. Interesting. That's right where you're taking the sample now. 4. That's the strongest point on the tree? Yes, sir. If you come to the back, there's no clicks whatsoever.
Suddenly, the dark woods were full of sound.
We're getting very strange sounds out of the farmers' barnyard animals. They're very, very active, making an awful lot of noise.
All the animals in the forest were acting up, making a lot of noise. And the barnyard animals from the farm, which was on the adjacent side of the particular location, were also acting up.
One of his men pointed out a glowing light in the distance. With his tape recorder rolling, Holt documented every moment of this encounter.
You just saw a light there. Wait a minute. Where? Right in this position here, straight ahead, in between the tree. There it is again. Watch, straight ahead off my flash right there. There it is. Hey, I see it too. What is it? We don't know, sir.
We saw this bright red glowing object. It looked like an eye. It's the best way I can describe it. It was bright red, had a dark center, and appeared like as though it were winking.
We're about 150 or 200 yards from the site. Everything else is just deathly calm. There is no doubt about it. There's some type of strange flashing red light ahead. It's yellow. I saw a yellow tinge in it too. Weird. It appears to be maybe moving a bit this way. It's bright on has been. Yellow. It's coming this way. It is definitely coming this way.
It was moving through the trees, horizontally, but also traveling vertically. In other words, it was zigzagging through the trees and dripping what appeared to be, the best way I can describe it, as molten metal.
Holt and his men pursued the object into a nearby field.
As we approached, it receded, it went away from us, and went out into the farmer's field. It stayed there for probably 20, 30 seconds, maybe a little more.
There's no doubt about it. This is weird.
And then it silently exploded and broke into multiple white objects. So we went into the field and searched around on the ground looking for burnt marks or evidence of whatever was coming off the object.
The men found nothing in the field. Overhead, the object made a sudden turn.
It approached us at very, very high speed.
Here he comes from the south. He's coming toward us now.
It stopped overhead and sent down a beam. The best way I can describe it is like a laser beam.
Now we're observing what appears to be a beam coming down to the ground. This is unreal.
It was a steady, constant beam as far as the diameter. It fell at our feet, and we all just were in awe. And I thought, was it trying to signal? Is it trying to warn us? Is it threatening us? And just as suddenly as it appeared, the light went click and was off.
The object sped away. The team watched, mesmerized, as it moved over the base and continued to beam lights to the ground. To some, it appeared that the light was beamed directly into the base's weapons storage area, where nuclear missiles were reportedly housed.
There's one object still hovering over Woodbridge Base at about 5 to 10 degrees off the horizon, still moving erratic and similar lights and beaming down this area.
At this point, Holt's recorder ran out of tape. A craft was still hovering in the distance, but Holt and his team weren't sure what to do next. Unnerved and exhausted, the men headed back to base. Airman John Burroughs, who had witnessed a UFO 2 nights earlier, arrived at the site, along with Sergeant Adrian Bustinza. Burroughs was immediately concerned by the behavior of the men returning from the field.
They were kind of, I don't know, they were weird. I mean, they were upset.
After a brief conversation, Burroughs spotted a blue light glowing in the clearing that Holt had just examined. The airman was determined to investigate further.
I was bugging him, come on, Colonel, let me go out and see. I want to see what it is. So he finally authorized myself and Bustinza to go forward to get a closer look.
The men ran toward the strange blue glow in the field.
As I was getting close to whatever it was, all of a sudden it was gone.
The field was thrown into darkness, leaving the airmen scared and confused.
It just was gone. And I'm standing out in the field, and there's nothing.
Burroughs turned to Bustinza in disbelief.
And he goes, what happened to you? And I go, I don't know what you're talking about. He goes, and you were like involved in the lights. He said, you were just like, it was like all of a sudden you were there and then you were in the lights and you were gone.
Burroughs and Bustinza returned to base. To Burroughs, there seemed to be more questions than answers. January 1981. The Woodbridge Bentwaters air bases were buzzing with rumors of alleged UFO sightings by U.S. Air Force personnel.
Many of them were some years into their tour of duty. These were highly trained witnesses. It's not as if they'd all just turned up there the night before.
The military investigation that followed remains controversial to this day. Witnesses to the landings believe the military was more interested in damage control than in finding out the truth.